One day, the evil-hearted Queen Hela was admiring her beauty in the magic mirror when she received an unexpected answer. The mirror told her that Snow White was now more beautiful than her. This news drove the queen mad with rage. Determined to destroy Snow White's beauty, Hela summoned her most trusted hunter. She ordered him to take Snow White into the forest and leave her among the wild beasts. The hunter set off on his journey to carry out the queen's command. The next morning, Snow White and the hunter went into the forest. Secretly, the hunter scattered bait around to lure the wild beasts. Then he hid himself in a corner. But just at that moment, Snow White found a wounded bird on the ground. She gently picked it up and tended to its wound. Seeing Snow White's kindness and innocence, the hunter couldn't bring himself to harm her. He felt a deep pang of guilt in his heart. Just then, a wild lion appeared in the distance. It was slowly approaching Snow White. The hunter, desperate to save Snow White, shouted, "Run, my princess! Run and escape!" Upon the hunter's warning, the princess began to run. The lion chased after her. The hunter managed to stop it. Snow White, on the other hand, had lost her way deep in the forest. With a flicker of hope in her heart, she wandered through the darkness, searching for a place to go. When the hunter returned to the queen and said, "Your command has been fulfilled, my queen," the queen burst into a triumphant laugh. She was now certain that she was the only beautiful one in the world. However, as Snow White continued wandering through the forest, she eventually came across the most charming little house. This house had tiny windows, a little door, and a charming little garden. The princess knocked on the door, but no one answered. When the princess gently pushed the door with her hand, it creaked open on its own. The princess hesitantly stepped inside. The interior of the house was just as wonderful as the outside. The place, decorated with tiny pots, spoons, and plates, enchanted the princess. However, she was very tired and hungry. She satisfied her hunger with the food she found on the tiny table. After that, she lay down on one of the neatly arranged beds and quickly fell asleep. After a while, the 7 dwarfs who owned the house left the mine and set off for home, singing merrily along the way. When cheerful, grumpy, curious, shy, clumsy, wise, and sleepy arrived home, they immediately sensed that something was off. One of them discovered Snow White sleeping in one of the beds. At that moment, the princess opened her eyes. At first, she was a little scared, but soon realized that the dwarfs were harmless. The princess began by apologizing for entering their home without permission. Then she told them everything that had happened to her. The dwarfs felt very sorry for her and promised to protect her. But they had one condition. She must never open the door to strangers. Meanwhile, Queen Hela learned from her magic mirror that Snow White was still alive. She became furious and devised a new plan to get rid of her. At the break of dawn, she disguised herself as a rabbit and approached Snow White. Seeing the rabbit injured while watering the flowers in the garden, the princess took it inside, thinking it needed help. Though appearing as a rabbit, Hela transformed back into her true form with a spell and secretly dripped poison onto the pillow before slipping away. Just as the princess was about to lie down for some rest after her garden work, the 7 dwarfs arrived home. Overjoyed to see them, the princess went to greet them cheerfully. Together, they spent the evening by the fireplace, dancing and having fun. Later, they all fell asleep in the warm, cozy room heated by the firewood. Thus, the poison on the pillow vanished into nothing. Unaware of all this, the queen once again stood before her magic mirror. She asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The magic mirror replied, "There is, my queen. Snow White is more beautiful than you." Unable to believe what she heard, Queen Hela was consumed with rage. She immediately rushed to her spell room to devise a new plan. After all, she was not someone who gave up easily. With a newly brewed potion, she transformed herself into an old woman. She also prepared a basket full of poisonous bright red apples. Then she made her way to the dwarf's house and knocked on the door. When Snow White saw that the visitor was an old woman, she felt sorry for her and opened the door. The old woman handed the princess one of the apples. Snow White took the apple from the witch's hand. Hungrily, she took a big bite. But before she could even finish her bite, the poison took effect. And the princess collapsed to the ground. The old woman let out wicked laughter as she disappeared into the distance. Meanwhile, a handsome prince traveling from distant lands was wandering through the deep forest. Just as he was about to approach her to ask if she needed help, the old woman suddenly transformed back into the evil queen Hela. At that moment, the 7 dwarfs returned home and found Snow White lying lifeless on the ground. They were heartbroken and wept bitterly. Then they placed the princess in a glass coffin and set it adrift on the kingdom's longest river so that all could see her beauty. As he rode his white horse along the riverbank, the prince noticed the glass coffin floating in a small boat. For a while, he followed the drifting glass coffin on horseback. When he saw the breathtaking beauty of Snow White inside the coffin, his heart began to race. Leaving his horse behind, he leaped into the boat. Believing that the beautiful princess was dead, the prince took out the stardust necklace from his pocket and placed it around her neck. As the prince's tears fell onto Snow White, a miracle happened, and she slowly opened her eyes. Through the magic of true love, Snow White came back to life. When she saw the prince in front of her, she thanked him for saving her life. The prince and the princess went to the king and told him everything that had happened. Upon learning what the wicked Queen Hela had done to Snow White, the king banished her from the palace. He shattered her magic mirror and gave the broken pieces to a junk dealer. While the queen suffered in poverty, she finally understood that evil deeds had no reward in life, but it was far too late. Snow White and the prince held a grand wedding that lasted 3 days and 3 nights, and they lived happily ever